Good morning, my lovely little ghosts, and welcome to the Dark Orchard. I'm Laura, and this is a Valentine's Day video. As I said in my intro, this is a Valentine's Day video. More specifically, today I'm going to be talking about George Remus, the man that supposedly is the inspiration for Jay Gatsby. I had a lot of ideas for my Valentine's Day video this year, but then I was thinking, last year I did a Gatsby-inspired makeup look, the year before I did a makeup look, so this year, I think I'm just going to talk. So this year I thought, why not talk about something Gatsby adjacent, since last year I did the Gatsby-inspired makeup. So the following is the tragic tale of the real-life Jay Gatsby. The information that I'm about to give you is a compilation of different stories gathered together, all on the same topic, Cincinnati's king of bootleggers, known as George Remus. So most of you probably know that in the 1920s, the U.S. Congress decided to ban sale of alcohol. This, like with most banned things, made people more creative, and bootleggers sprung up. The one that profited the absolute most was Remus. Before becoming the king of bootleggers, he was also a pharmacist and lawyer. And through those careers, he became interested in the twists and turns involved in certain laws. And he noticed that the criminals that he defended as a lawyer were getting very wealthy off of their bootlegging schemes. And you could get a certification for selling alcohol under the guise of a medicinal use. That's where him being a pharmacist came into play. So he took advantage of that loophole. In addition, he also purchased distilleries and created trucking companies. His own employees would then steal the medicinal alcohol so that he could then push it illegally. And this wouldn't be a Valentine's Day story without a little romance. Now that we've gotten the base for the story out of the way, let's talk a little bit about his love life. During the time that he was buying the trucks and stealing the alcohol and all of that, he, who was already married with a child, fell in love with the cleaning woman at his law office. Her name was Imogen Holmes, and after 4 years he divorced his first wife and married Imogen. So once remarried, Remus purchased a 50-acre farmland. This served as a home base for his operations. Within 3 years, he had made $40 million. In today's dollar amounts, that's like $900 million off of bootlegging alcohol. Do you see now why he's called the bootleg king? And much like Jay Gatsby, Remus was not ashamed of showing off his wealth. It's reported that when he bought his mansion, he decorated it with the finest art and would hold lavish parties. Again, much like Jay Gatsby. He also furnished the house with the most expensive furniture and exotic plants. It's also rumored that he installed a massive indoor Grecian pool with rockwood tile. This was a gift to his daughter, and it cost him somewhere between $125,000 and $175,000, depending on who you ask. And the farm that surrounded the mansion was known as Death Valley. And it was known as Death Valley because he had armed guards, and he made the terrain around it to be like rocky and hilly and just somewhere that you wouldn't want to go in the dark, basically. So he created a fortress around the mansion and the base for his bootleg operation. And as I said before, he was known for his elegant parties, much like Jay Gatsby. And it's even said that he gave his guests things like watches and jewelry and cars. It's said that he would actually put car keys underneath platters, and people would leave with brand new Pontiacs. And despite his gift giving, like Gatsby, Remus would retreat into the home and not actually be a host during these parties. He would be at his library, away from the guests, researching different charities that he could donate to, because yes, he was also a very charitable man with some of the money that he made with his underground bootleg business. However, On the flip side of his charitable nature, he also paid off lawyers and cops, and there's even a rumor that he paid off a U.S. Marshal just to keep his business under wraps. Much hush-hush. No talk about the underground business. But because he had that pull with law enforcement and different officers, he got away with even sabotaging other bootleggers so that he would be the top dog. And he was even caught sabotaging a Jack Daniel's distillery in St. Louis. So, needless to say, he quickly owned 1/3 of the U.S. liquor supply. Now, we mentioned St. Louis, and again, it is rumored that at one point he met F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's rumored that he met him at the Seelbach Hotel in Louisville, Kentucky. And it's also rumored that Fitzgerald was infatuated with his stories. And, of course, the persona. And you can really see that reflected in the character of Gatsby. Both Gatsby and Remus wanted to be a part of a world that they couldn't quite fit into. And they were both in Louisville at the same time in their life's timelines. Another similarity is that both Remus and Gatsby owned a series of pharmacies. They both threw lush parties, and they both were in love with a certain kind of woman. As I said, that's a rumor. It's not officially confirmed. However, Fitzgerald did write Gatsby in 1925, which is 5 years after Remus got started. So he would have had some stories to tell, and he would have had that love story to tell if they met within that time frame. I personally believe it. As with most things, Remus's success also came to an end. It all caught up to him in 1925. Remus was charged with thousands of counts of violation of the Volstead Act. He was sentenced to a 2-year term in the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. The Volstead Act, by the way, is the National Prohibition Act, and it was enacted to carry out the 18th Amendment, which established prohibition in the United States, and it wasn't repealed until the 1930s. Even on his way to serve his prison term, he had a party. He threw a party on his way there in a private train coach. And once he was there, he had his cell decorated with flowers and lots of pretty things, much like Al Capone. You've heard stories about his cell and how it was decorated. I believe that was Eastern State Penitentiary. Remus had his cell decorated as well, and Imogen would visit often, bringing him cooking and also cleaning his cell. Here's where things get a little dodgy. Pun intended. It's not 100% clear who this character was, but this is the story that I've heard the most. While serving at the penitentiary, Remus had a cellmate named Franklin Dodge. Now, Remus had left Imogen in charge of his estate, and of course he was hiding things from the government. He and Dodge got along swell. But there was a problem. Dodge was an undercover FBI agent, and he was there investigating something called the Savannah 4 and a warden that was involved. But there Remus was, spilling all his little dirty secrets. So what does that mean for our real-life Gatsby? Well, it wouldn't be a Gatsby-inspired story without a little tragedy. Once he'd learned enough, Dodge resigned from the FBI. He resigned and he booked it to Cincinnati. And then he wooed his way into the life of Remus's wife, Imogen. With this Daisy counterpart under his thumb, Dodge managed to completely dismantle the bootleggers' empire. And of course, that left Remus out in the cold. Imogen sold his possessions, his distillery, and the mansion. And it's rumored that she also left one pair of shoes, and those shoes belonged to Dodge. When she was done destroying everything he'd made, Remus had $100 to his name. And then, the moment he was let out of prison, she filed for divorce. So he was transferred from the federal prison back to Ohio, where he had to serve a couple of more years, and then he had to sit there on divorce papers while he served his time in Ohio. In the meantime, Dodge and Imogen weren't done with him yet. They tried to have him deported. And when that failed, they paid a hitman $15,000 to try to assassinate him. In 1927, Remus was released. And like a crime movie, he chased Imogen and his daughter all over the United States. It was a whole summer of them moving from place to place and him just barely missing them. Then finally, when Imogen and the daughter were on their way for Imogen to finalize the divorce, Remus followed them in a cab. She realized he was following him and had the driver pull over, and then she took off into the park. So she took off on foot into a park. Now this is where it gets real cinematic. Like, this feels like a scene from a movie, as if the rest hadn't already. So Imogen takes off on foot, Remus follows right after her, and they go running into the park. Then he corners her at a gazebo, and in front of bystanders, he draws a revolver and shoots her. At 8:30 a.m. the following morning, Remus turned himself in. He walked into a police station and admitted to killing his wife. He told them he wanted to surrender. They went and searched the park, and his revolver was never found. His confession, of course, led to his arrest, and the trial drew national coverage. And the prosecution was led by Charles Taft, son of President Taft. So cool. So despite having bystanders, despite a confession, Remus represented himself at the trial. It only took 19 minutes for the jury to come to a verdict. Can you guess what the verdict was? They found him not guilty due to a crime of passion led by momentary insanity. And it was also revealed that people that they interviewed, the bystanders that witnessed the murder, talked down on Imogen and all the things that she had done to him. They just couldn't believe that she had hooked up with a former FBI agent while still married to a man that was in prison. The jury was quoted to say, Remus had suffered almost beyond human endurance. So, once Remus was found not guilty, he hosted a party. And his guest of honors? The jury that didn't convict him. And then he was taken off to an asylum, because the verdict, of course, still was momentary insanity, so he had to spend some time in an asylum. His time there was short-lived, though, very short-lived. He was only there for 6 months, because he was acquitted of the murder of his wife, and in the asylum he reasoned that he wasn't actually crazy. He actually even used Taft's argument in the prosecution against the asylum, and used the facts that Taft held out there, saying that he wasn't insane, and twisted it around for the asylum to be like, I'm not insane, look, Taft said so. So once he was released, he tried to get back into bootlegging, but the rum running business was just too far gone at this point. It was at that time an underground booming business that no longer had room for its king. So Remus retired to Covington, just along the Ohio River. And he bought stock in the Cincinnati Reds. He lived a relatively quiet life after that, and he even remarried for the 3rd time. Remus was running a small contracting firm until the 1950s, and he married his secretary, Blanche Watson. In 1950, Remus had a stroke, and he lived out 2 more years in a boarding house, where he was taken care of by a nurse. Then he died in 1952 of a cerebral hemorrhage. His resting place is beside Miss Watson in Riverside Cemetery in Kentucky. So that was me telling the tragic love story of the real-life Jay Gatsby. For the comments down below, tell me who your favorite character is from The Great Gatsby. And if you don't talk to me about that, talk to me about something, because I love for you to talk to me down in the comments. Happy Valentine's Day, my lovely little ghosts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you come around again soon. Say bye. Bye. Say Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day.